Welcome everyone to Nick and Tom's Intercontinental Adventure, recorded live on the Tom Colohue YouTube channel, where today we're going to do a massive breakdown, not as in a massive mental breakdown, that is always a consideration. It is going to be a breakdown of Survivor Series 2023. Wargames is upon us, and Wargames is what we're going to be talking all about. Can I welcome, and can you join me in welcoming my guest Nick Barbati to the channel? Once again, welcome Nick.
You know what? I don't feel welcomed.
Right.
Let me tell you what. I have a day off from work, so here's what I'm doing. I'm joining you after. Guess what greeted me this morning, Tom?
What's that?
A flat tire. So I got to sit around a round table in Somerville, New Jersey, with three individuals. One who was trying to tiptoe into flirting, into conversation, and engaging everyone about politics. Another one who wanted to speak about college football, and then when nobody bit, just started railing against fraternities. And then the other woman who the entire time was there to get her Cadillac converter fixed, only to find out it was stolen.
Okay, so you've had an experience.
$300 later, I'm here, and thank God I'm here, because this is going to surely pay off those bills, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just gonna say yeah. And
sure.
Hope massively for the best.
Let's hope for the best. I'm ready to go to war.
Good, because we're heading to War Games. So where else is better to go to war to than War Games? How do you feel about the War Game structure?
Well, I would throw you in the war first and run.
Well, that's absolutely lovely. And I
how
think
do
you
I
get to
feel
throw
about...
people.
Okay, Tom, enough with your jokes. Here is what I'm gonna say. I don't love war games. I've said this before. You know, there's just something about the structure of the match that it seems like it's oh, we got fire alarms. This is perfect, Tom. I'm
Great.
so excited. So I'm gonna go outside. I'm right here.
I'm gonna go ahead and really quieten down the audio on your side.
Okay, no, I'm good. So, okay, can you hear me, Tom?
Yes.
Okay. See, I'm always giving the people a show. You can't tell everybody I'm not a show woman.
You are definitely a show woman.
Right. So here is the thing about war games. I am interested in it as a concept. It's one of those concepts that to me is always sexier in thought than it actually is in implementation. The matches are overly long. There is inherent limitations by having a cage around the ring. And then, once the match starts, I mean, these aren't, I don't know that there's any sense that you can make by having a kendo stick thrown into a ring. And also how many times we can bend ourselves into pretzels to find tables inside of the cage. So you're really enjoying this, aren't you?
Yes, I am. I'm also really enjoying the chat's reaction to this, primarily Ed's.
And what is Ed saying?
So to read out a few things. Joe says, hey everyone, hello Joe. Ed says, hey, it's Nick. Also, hi Tom. Traditional there. Danielle is dropping some snakes into the chat. There's a lot of excitement about Randy Orton. Ed says, that's what you get being in New Jersey.
Yeah, I agree, Ed.
And then says, Nick is destined to have a bad day. And he's like, nope, this will work.
Yeah, listen, here's the thing. We're having fun. Don't you think?
I cannot question the perseverance. The commitment to Nick
right.
and Tom's Intercontinental Adventure is unquestionable, sir.
Yep. Okay, so let's get going, Tom.
Let's get going. So, Richard Martinez is bringing us our first question. Can you see Randy and Jay being the last two in the cage? What do you reckon is going to be the situation for the last two entering War Games?
Well, so I feel like you just asked me two different questions. So, last two entering in the actual ring.
Richard was asking whether it's going to be Randy and Jay. I opened it up a little bit further.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, it's oddly specific, quite frankly. But I think Randy Orton definitely will be the last one. That seems about right. And it seems like, you should be building up to the most compelling person coming in. And Randy Orton is certainly the most compelling person in this match. I am not a huge Randy Orton fan. I respect his work quite well, but he's not someone who has ever excited me as a performer. So we know Randy Orton. We know how Randy Orton wrestles. We know all of the performance qualities we are going to experience. But in general, I think keeping him mysterious. Now, Jay being the last person is interesting. Second to last person, I presume, is what we mean, because let's go through the rest of the team. I do think that Cody, as we know, has already the built-in experience of going on scholarship, as I said, at last year's Royal Rumble.
Yeah.
He needs to, if he's going to be going against Roman Reigns, be entering into things as a position of, being the person who can go to war, pun intended here, for extended period of time and not feel like he's just being advanced to the end. So he is someone that, yes, I would quite frankly open the match with him. He's the one on the poster with the camouflage paint, face paint. That just works. That really, really does work for me. Tom, give me some others. Seth Rollins.
Seth Rollins, Sami Zayn.
Yeah, he's always one to go long with matches. That's kind of his thing, is that he gets to do the Shawn Michaels treatment of going wall to wall. So yeah, sure, he would be in there. And Sami Zayn too is like the underdog. So you throw them in for the 3 and then have Jay and then Randy. I think that's a great idea and actually sounds like the right order.
I'd be very happy with that. I'm also confident that Randy Orton will be last in. We need to protect him at least a little bit when you consider Wargames is a bit of a damaging one and his back isn't exactly at the top level at this particular point. I think Jay's going to be the workhorse here. I think he's the one who's going to be working the longest, likely starting the match because he's got the most to prove. And if we're heading into WrestleMania, he needs to prove to some people that he can be trusted, including a Randy Orton. I don't know if Randy Orton's coming into this as face or heel, but that only encourages me to think that he'll come in last because if he's going to RKO Jay, which he may well do, it could just be in the process of actually returning. Randy Orton's one of those. If he RKO's a face, that doesn't make him a heel. It's a lot like Steve Austin. He could stun The Rock until the end of time. He'd still be fine. And I can definitely see a world in which Randy Orton gets the win, RKO's Jay, then shakes his hand afterwards.
Right. Well, okay. But you raise an interesting point. I think you're right. I think now that we talked this through, Jay will be the first person in because you can't have Jay make a facial expression like he did when Randy Orton was being announced as the teammate and then have them stand in a cage together.
No, absolutely.
Right?
It's very sad.
So you have Jay go in first and then, and then Randy go last. I think that makes most sense. You know what, Tom? Every once in a while, you're right.
Oh, aren't you lovely? I think it's very telling that we've got Sami Zayn and Jey Uso both in the cage for a second year in a row. Previously, they were trying to prove that they could be trusted to each other, and now Jay's trying to prove that he can be trusted to other people. So I like the sort of the juxtaposition, the dynamic reversal there. It really does make Jay an interesting character. A question from John Gillis. Do you think Cody bleeds?
Yes.
I can definitely see Wargames including a little bit of blood this time around. Cody, he's a gusher. What can I say? I also think it's interesting that Seth Rollins is actually sort of a much smaller part of this, despite being World Heavyweight Champion. Much like Becky Lynch in the women's match, Seth feels like a bit of an outsider looking in. Do you agree or disagree there?
I actually agree with that, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I think Seth Rollins is at danger point of being overexposed at times. And I don't think he is, listen, he has the work to back up any of his ounce of his screen time. That's not what's at question here. But there is a point of him becoming a bit too familiar to the audience. So it's not bad to have a month where you take a personality step back, still make those appearances, still be someone that people want to see. Yeah. But I also think that it seems to me like they're laying the groundwork for his next big feud. And I think that until that is ready to be unleashed, this is a fine place for him to be.
I'm interested to see who the next big feud will be. He's already worked with Shinsuke Nakamura, he's worked with Drew McIntyre. There really isn't that big a wealth of options here. To go through a couple of questions as well. Jason saying happy Wednesday, Tom, Nick and chat. Welcome, Jason. Ori says the same, says hi, Tom. We have Richard again.
Hey, Tom.
It's my show, mate. It's my show.
It's not your show, actually.
Richard
Nick and Tom's Intercontinental Adventure.
It is Nick and Tom's Intercontinental Adventure. I am on the way to, or should I say, Sai is on the way to creating an overlay that respects that. At the moment, we are rocking the spoiler warning one. Richard says, could Wargames end with Drew pinning Seth, thus warranting a rematch for the World Heavyweight Championship? I don't know who Seth could legitimately be facing going into the Royal Rumble. The World Heavyweight Championship rematch with Drew, I could see it happening, even though personally I think Drew versus Cody is a Rumble match.
That sounds better to me. That sounds more exciting and more interesting, Tom. I agree with that.
Sai here says, hey Nick, Tom and all, glad I caught this. Wiggly said, is this live? We are indeed live. This is a live mailbox edition of Nick and Tom's Intercontinental Adventure. If you have questions, please be sure to get them in. We will be
now, let me tell people why we do this, Tom. Because we record typically on Saturdays, and it doesn't make sense for us to just come in mid-show or, before the show, that you're going to hear this probably 2 hours before a major premium live event. We want this to be able to be something that we interact with people about, talk about the most pressing issues, and then when it posts on Saturday, you can listen, quite frankly, on the treadmill right before the big show starts.
Very true, and it's very handy in that. If you think the Saudi Arabia shows, for example, we would have gone live with Nick and Tom's during the actual show. There's not much point with our schedule having a preview on the day, so that's why we preview a week ahead. We will be sort of repeating our predictions just so that everyone's up to speed on the different platforms, but we will also be answering as many questions as we get in. Dom says, what's up, Tom, Chat and Nick? Don't forget to hit the like button. Thank you, Dom. Ed says, what about Randy RKOing Seth post-match to tease that feud? Again, a suggestion that Randy might not be face after all.
Right, and well, I think that's possible. Randy Orton is never laying in one particular pocket, and if he does, it's quite frankly, when he's a babyface, it feels awkward and temporary. So I think him being the unpredictable Viper is always going to be something that is very comfortable for Randy Orton to serve in that role. I don't find anything all that interesting about the prospect of a Randy Orton versus Seth Rollins feud, but, I mean, is it possible? Sure. I'm trying to think in terms of Randy Orton about what can excite me. And there's not much. I mean, Randy Orton versus Cody Rhodes could be interesting. Yeah. That might be the turn that I would find most interesting. They've been leaning into the legacy element. I don't think they flirt with that too much if they're not going to do something with it. I think that might be a little bit more interesting. Seth Rollins, like I said, is interesting to me because he's been champion and it hasn't been an exciting reign for me. And there's not a whole lot of prospects that do excite me. After the Monday show, though, I will say, Tom, when we say like what could be his next big feud, I like what you're saying about Cody and Drew being an option. And for Seth, I think there's a case to be made for fast-tracking Gunther. I really do. I think his promo was so fabulous. And I just think I don't think of Gunther versus Rollins necessarily as a Mania match. I could see it as a Royal Rumble match.
I personally could definitely see it as a Mania match. I think there's a lot of potential there for it, and I think Gunther's ready for that step.
Let me tell you what I would use as the comparison, and it's a long time ago, 1991, Sergeant Slaughter defeats Ultimate Warrior for the championship at the Royal Rumble, and then goes on to defend against Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania. And that, I wouldn't necessarily have Gunther lose at Mania, maybe, I don't know, but I think maybe you fast track it and get the title on him. That's maybe what I think would be best. Do I think that's what's going to happen? No.
It's another reason I do think we're going to see the cash-in soon from Damian Priest. I am starting to think that Damian Priest will actually be defending the World Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania instead of challenging for it at this point, because there just doesn't seem to be many other options.
Yeah, I'm taking us on a little tour, Tom, so don't think you're going to lose me. I'm just going to plug in.
That's absolutely fine. Is the fire alarm finally abated?
It sure has. You know what? Too hot to handle, too cold to hold. That's me.
We are getting a lot of questions about Randy Orton, particularly questions about, for example, Randy Orton versus Cody. We've discussed that a little bit, so we'll move on from there. Ori says, hi, Nick, whom I've never seen before after you were so annoyed about her only saying hi to me. How dare you?
How handsome am I? Well, maybe not when the sun's there. There we go.
We'll have to get back. There you go. The lighting's much better now. Better.
Beautiful smile.
Richard says, does LA Knight and the Bloodline miss Survivor Series? They are not currently listed as on the card. They will be missing the event. Do you feel like that's a big miss, Nick?
Well, I don't think they will be missing the event. I do think the Bloodline, as I have stated in the past, will be making an appearance during the War Games match. And I think that they will be there to help assist Judgment Day in some way. And I think it could be in the form of attacking Jey Uso in particular.
So if you missed this week's Nick and Tom's Intercontinental Adventure, or you're not someone who regularly listens to PWTorch, you won't have heard this particular point, but I do think it's worth checking out and a very good play indeed. The idea that the Bloodline could well get a little bit of revenge here, and I do think there's a lot of revenge that they want to be getting. It's very strange, and it always feels strange for the Bloodline to not be involved in any event. Survivor Series, of course, is one of the big ones, and personally, Survivor Series is one of those that I feel needs the Bloodline, particularly after last year's War Games match. It just felt like a really big deal. Now your lighting's better. Now you look so handsome. So I do feel they'll be missed. LA Knight, not so much. I'm not so convinced that he needs to be exposed like that every week. I would take my time with it, and I do feel we're getting close to a point of overexposure on LA Knight. Absence does, after all, make the heart grow fonder.
I don't know that LA Knight will be off the show either, though, Tom. I don't think he needs to be in a match. I think there's a small card here, so it would not surprise me to have him be in an in-ring segment of some kind.
I get what you're saying. Chris Best says, good afternoon, gentlemen. Good afternoon, Chris.
Good afternoon.
Daniela says, do you reckon Randy is Raw or SmackDown? And do you see him being on the show week in, week out? Personally, I do see him being on Raw full-time, week in, week out, though I will say Randy Orton does have limited dates in his contract, and every year we're shown that he takes a little bit of time off, so it won't be every single week.
Yeah, I think Raw probably needs him the most, although I would be most intrigued with him on SmackDown. But there is the possibility of interaction with him and Jay over on Raw, him and Cody on Raw. I think, yeah. But, I think I don't know how limited our time with Randy Orton is going to be, but yeah. I think getting him in the ring with Roman Reigns should be a priority.
I agree with that, and I do feel he'll be on Raw for a bit and then over to SmackDown pretty much consistently. Randy Orton, historically, at least since 2016, has been a SmackDown guy, and he's made some pretty big moments there, including joining the Wyatt family, for example. Mm-hmm. He's one of those that I can see winning future world championships. I think John Cena's done. I think Randy Orton still has a lot to give, and he can certainly legitimize the World Heavyweight Championship a little more.
Tom, how are we doing tips? Remember, we got to make back $300. Let's go.
You want to make $300? We have never made $300 in one show.
Well, it's because you haven't tried. You haven't tried.
Is this you going back to OnlyFans again?
Well, that didn't work out so well.
No, it didn't, did it?
Feet don't really have much of an attraction when one's bigger than the other.
Feet don't have much of an attraction at all. I don't get that one. I don't want to kink shame in any way, shape, or form. Do your thing. You're not hurting anyone. But I just don't understand that one.
Well, Larsa Pippen, Scottie Pippen's ex-wife, has made a killing over there, but just allegedly showing feet.
A lot of people do. A lot of people do. Apparently, it's just one of those fetishes that the rich people have.
Oh, okay.
Who knows? Noob says, will we see Randy Orton RKO Rhea Ripley? Because she's been presented as a threat as of late. It's Randy Orton. You can never rule out an RKO to a woman.
Right. Well, I think that era is past a bit. I don't know that we're in a space. I think it's a risk reward type thing, and I don't think the reward is high enough for them to do such a move.
No, there have definitely been moments when it was. I'm thinking Baron Corbin on Becky Lynch, for example.
Yes,
especially when you consider that was about to be a cash-in with Brock as well, and Becky would undoubtedly have shown herself on that one. And also, more recently, Randy Orton on Nia Jax in a Royal Rumble. Nia Jax was the most hated person in wrestling at the time. It did work out. That said, I do agree. I think that age has ended, and while Rhea Ripley has been built up to be a serious threat, the fact that there are two Rhea Ripleys really doesn't help that as a concept.
I would also argue that in both of those cases, the females were established competitors in the match. The rules of engagement were set.
True. Very true. Marcel says, hello, Tom and Nick and chat. How are you all? Doing well, thank you, Marcel. Sai says, unpopular opinion, or is it? Survivor Series gets some leeway because it's one of the original Big Four, but I don't think this is a strong card. I would agree with that. Outside of Wargames, I don't think the card is strong.
Yeah, exactly. But that's like saying that outside of Royal Rumble, you're assessing cards. I mean, this is a War Games show with some preliminary matches. That's really all this is. Yeah. Even if one of the War Games opens the show, it is still they're stuffing to a turkey, Tom. Quite frankly, it's going to be reliant on how good the War Games matches are. I would argue that the women's War Games match has the potential to be the best women's War Games match that we've ever seen, NXT or beyond. And I think what I think is really working with the men's storyline is the fact that Judgment Day is a unit, that this isn't a bunch of randoms. Last year we had that benefit by also having Bloodline. Whereas I think what I do think is different between this year and last year is there was a pregnancy pause in all of anything that involved Bloodline. Things just took so much longer. with Judgment Day, there isn't that feeling that we're watching a slow moving soap opera. That it is, a little bit more breakneck, and I think that you'll see more energy in this match, and there's less nuances with the acting. I think it'll just be more exciting of a watch.
Sai has also reminded me to plug the fact that we on the Tom Colohue channel will be live for Survivor Series Watch Party if you'd like to check that out.
Well, and I will be going live from Sabor, the restaurant that I'll be having dinner at, and then I'm going to be walking over and watching the show. So I will not be live.
You will not be live, but you will be.
But you know what? Can I tell you what I'm teasing? So, I'm not
Tease
going
me.
to WrestleMania. I decided I'm not going to WrestleMania. Too much money, and I like Chinese food on my couch watching, much better. Really, I just like the whole experience. I'm going to miss the excitement of walking into the Lincoln Field, but, it's... my thousands of dollars remaining in my bank account will thank me for that. But I think I'm going to go to the NXT, Stand and Deliver.
Ooh, interesting.
I think that would be great. So, I wonder if anybody else is out there thinking the same thing or will be going there. I just think that would be it's going to be a great show. Get in your wrestling fix, be in the Philadelphia area, maybe go to the Fan Fest, whatever they're called things, and then drive home and then watch the big show.
Well, I guarantee you there'll be people from this channel who are going to NXT, so I'll see if we can get a few people along there with you if you'd like.
And we're gonna meet for a drink. We're gonna have a beer, and then we're gonna go watch the show.
But to be fair, we were considering doing that for Wembley of AEW. I think we'll do it next year. I didn't actually pay out that first time, but I do think it's something that could be a lot of fun. We've talked about it before. A live Nick and Tom's,
right,
would be a great time. It depends if people are interested. Chris says, I love how Cody was not so subtle with his promo on Monday, but the look on Jey Uso's face was priceless. We've spoken in the past about Jey Uso's acting, and I do feel he's one of the best in the business right now at those moments that just grab the attention of the camera. This was definitely a great one, Nick.
Oh, he's the best actor in all of the WWE, by far. He could be an award-winning actor. Absolutely.
Khalid says, Tom, are you guys excited to hear Randy Orton's theme song? I think the theme is actually okay, but it's not one I get hyped for. No,
I don't have any interest in. I think that the era of what he represents in WWE, I just missed. I was there watching it, but it did not grab me in any form of excitement. I was not excited when Edge returned, and that's the same era I hold this to. I'm much the same. Edge wasn't really for me, as it were. I do enjoy Randy Orton's work, but once you get him in ring, much like LA Knight, things slow down a bit. John Gillis says, do you guys think Nakamura will have a featured segment? I think probably, yes, at least briefly featured, because whoever he is talking about, it might well be someone in Wargames. What do you reckon of Nakamura's current play? Well, it could be about Randy Orton, and that could just be a follow-up feud to him. Listen, I don't know that it's even that deep. Do I think WWE is kind of flirting with the idea that it could be CM Punk to drum up interest? It's not beneath them to do. I think, it could be LA Knight. It could be anybody. It could be, to me, it's not game changing, though. That's what I would say. Is I don't think we're going to be watching this show and being surprised that Phil Brooks is going to be greeting us at any point. I don't see that. So then, really, beyond that, it's not going to be anyone out of the typical. I'm glad we've got to the point of mentioning CM Punk. I didn't mention CM Punk. You did. So a few things on that one. When it comes to the point of WWE using the name CM Punk to draw up interest for Survivor Series, I have a video in the WTF Wrestling series on this channel that you may want to check out. But immediately after John Gillis's question, we had our first question about CM Punk, 25 minutes in. Spoiler warning was 2 days ago. I actually pinned a comment in the top saying, ask me about CM Punk. We got almost 100 comments about CM Punk specifically. So there is no question that there is a huge amount of interest in this. Rocky says, do you think Nakamura is talking about Punk? No, I do not, because Punk does not work for the WWE. Nick? Do I think it's about CM Punk? Yes. Yes, I do, but not. I think it's a tease. It's just throwing something out there, hoping that it drums up interest. WWE does not need CM Punk. They know exactly what they're doing with the hints. It is to be cheeky, right? Isn't that the phrase? That's really all that it really is supposed to. It's a wink and a nod, but they know we know better this time. have said something last week that I'm going to repeat. This is literally the last moment where CM Punk could ever be relevant to WWE. It is literally the last moment for someone who is such a high risk hire that, the stage is set, right? He had another bad incident with a company. He's now a free agent. They're in Chicago for a major pay-per-view. This is it, folks. If it doesn't happen, and Tom's predicting that it's not, I don't see it happening either, and I just don't see why it would happen ever again. Why take it on? They do not need him. No new people are coming into the show to watch him. So why would they disrupt their locker room? Tell me. There is no good answer.
No, there is no good answer. I don't believe there is an answer. I don't believe there is any interest from WWE in CM Punk, and I simply do not believe that we will ever see CM Punk back on WWE TV.
There is a higher likelihood of Lakota Ortega coming down that aisle.
Mike says, is this live or a broadcast of the podcast from a few days ago? This is live. It's a live recording of Nick and Tom's Intercontinental Adventure. The audio will be in the PWTorch Daily Cast come Saturday, but please do ask any questions if you have them. We have a few opinions that come through. Jason says it's not a strong card. Dom says, do you think Wargames will be when Bayley gets kicked out of Damage Control? Personally, no. I think WWE likes to really string this along. Look at Jay versus Jimmy, for example. And I think Bayley will come out of this okay. But being kicked out of Damage Control is definitely in the offing. I think it will happen after she wins the Rumble myself. Nick?
Yep, that works. Yep. Yeah, I think that. Or, as I said to you, it's entirely possible that they prevent her from winning the Royal Rumble. That they just ceremonially dump her in the match.
I would say so. Richard says, I think all the matches will shine, but what hurts the card is that Santos and Zoe don't have the star power for a big 4 PLE. Now, I do agree that there is a smaller amount of overall star power in this actual pay-per-view. However, this is a huge opportunity for people. This time last year, the Brawling Brutes were in Wargames, for example. It's a huge opportunity to make yourself memorable, so I don't find an issue with that personally.
No, and why aren't we more excited about having new faces here? I mean, this is a real opportunity for something big to happen. Now, you might not be excited about Zoe Stark. I think there's reason not to be all that excited, but I'm excited for Santos. Why not? This is a fabulous opportunity for him.
No, I completely agree. And it does provide a platform about which they can really achieve something. Wiggly says, am I the only one thinking Miz might dethrone Gunter? I suspect so, yes.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you. Bye.
Ed says NXT is always a better show to see. Ed is our resident NXT expert.
Yes. Now, Ed, if I commit to this show, which I intend, I actually was thinking about buying the package of NXT, the SmackDown before WrestleMania, and the Raw after. But, last year's Raw after WrestleMania, that takes away some of my excitement. Boy, was that brutal. And I don't really want on Monday night, on a work night, have to sit there for 3 hours. The NXT show is the one that would most interest me. It really, really would.
Nikki Sean says, happy Thanksgiving. Very thankful for both of you. Nick, it's always fun debating Charlotte with you. Very excited about this show, and Santos has to beat Carlito, right?
Right. Well, no. Yes or no is the answer to that. Is it fun to debate Charlotte? Well, you know what? Is it fun to debate about if someone is the best ever? I mean, I guess I'm a big believer in giving people their flowers when you can, and I think Charlotte is at a point where I actually think the resistance has gone too far. I think at some point we need to recognize how much work she has put into making the women's division what it is today, and having it have the credibility that it does. Does she have, even to this day, moments that seem green and awkward? Yes, she is a very tall person. Some of the athleticism doesn't seem to always connect with some of her opponents. That just happens. I do think there's also times where she reads as overly cautious. I'd rather that than reckless, personally. So we can determine all day long about what we want. But here's what I would say to Sean and others out there. I love you, Sean, but looking back on it, what tires me? It actually exhausts me when I read on Twitter is people who are going on and on now about how Charlotte Flair versus Rhea Ripley was the best women's match of the year, one of the best matches of the year. That should have closed night one, but people like the people on this call who are resistant actually are the reasons that prevented that. The inherent, just let me block everything involving Charlotte damages moments that are just unnecessary. And quite frankly, it's too targeted for my liking.
I completely agree with that one. Completely agree. Wiggly says, I'm finding the feud between Miz and Gunter a bit silly, with Gunter referring to Miz as a nobody. Do you think that goes too far?
No, I actually think it fits Gunther's character completely. He is the anti-entertainer. Miz is the entertainer extraordinaire. They should be, completely on opposite sides of an issue. Don't you think?
No, I completely agree. I think you're absolutely right.
$300, Tom. We need $300.
Sai says, agreed on Mania, Nick. Stadium shows are not for me unless you want to watch on a big screen above the ring, which may as well be a TV at home.
Well, do you know what happened to me, Sai? Let me tell you. I went to WrestleMania 35. I got the floor seats. So it was not the first, just immediately surrounding the ring, but then the next group over. I thought there'd be a little ramp or something. There was no ramp, Tom. So I had people blocking my view. I'm not that tall. I'm only 5'9" 3/4. People blocking me from, being able to see directly into the ring. And the screen was probably right above my head. So I spent the whole night looking back and forward. It was not an enjoyable night for me. It was not an enjoyable night. It's very exciting to walk in there for the first time. I was at WrestleMania 29. You remember how cool that stage setup was? Incredible, Tom. WrestleMania 35 had one of the worst ones ever. I remember walking out there going is that it? Then I was sitting next to some guy named Bruce who thought who he was, Tom. And it's Bruce, no. I'll tell you offline, Tom. It was a no.
Wow, okay. I'm excited to hear that one. I can only really compare it to when it comes to big stadiums, the walk into Wembley. It's a different experience entirely, I feel. But for AEW, as an example, there were a couple of great matches in there. Nothing beat the moment you walk into Wembley. So I get what you're saying.
Yeah, the walking in moment is fabulous, but you got with all these things, there's a choice to be made of how much money we're going to spend. This is a larger conversation when it comes to entertainment, though, and I'm not being funny when I say that. Look at the expense that people like Taylor Swift and Beyonce are charging people on an entertainment basis. I don't know how people find the money to go to these things. I just watched on the WWE Network the documentary on Vladimir. Did you see it, Tom?
I have not.
It was, one of those documentaries that has one quick point to make, but in order to spread it out, they keep repeating the points over 40 minutes to give, you know what I mean? And you wonder why it's been on the shelf for a few years. It wasn't great, but you can't help but wonder, how do you afford all this? He says, well, I worked really, really hard, but I don't know. I couldn't do it.
I certainly couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Be a lot of flights. Richard says, I think Jay and Roman have the best facial expressions in the WWE, and same with Rhea. I think there's a good few people involved. I think Roman doesn't quite get the credit he deserves for it, but I also think people like The Miz are pretty expressive with their face, to be fair.
Yeah, Miz has a very elastic face. Roman is, I would say, less adaptable. I mean, I don't know that. I think he's a little bit one note in terms of facial expressions. I mean, he has does an absurd look, a cocky look, but I would say Jay's talent is much more versatile in terms of his facial expressions.
Roman very rarely shows his full range, and I think that is an intentional character choice. You don't often see him nervous, whereas with Jay, you get arrogant, you get confident, you get nervous, and at times you outright get afraid.
Right.
Which I just feel is a bit further. Chris says, I honestly think Randy gets a new remix to his theme that Rev Theory put out. So apparently there is a new remix out there to the Randy Orton theme. I can't personally see them changing something so iconic, but I've been wrong before on that one. What do you reckon?
Well, they changed Carlito's music for no good reason.
No good reason.
I agree. I don't think they're going to do it, but there's decisions that are made that I wonder why.
Many of them, mostly made by WWE. Sai says, although I crapped on the undercard, they've over-delivered on cards that haven't promised much. And for Survivor Series, and Survivor starts the ball rolling for Mania with the odd tease, should be an interesting show. Now, Sai's a regular listener to Nick and Tom's. It's in fact why he's here in the channel to begin with, first discovering my channel via Nick and Tom's. So I think we are in agreement. Survivor Series is the real kickoff point to WrestleMania. The Royal Rumble is certainly a stop along the way, but it is not the beginning of the road. Survivor Series tells us a lot about what the plans are, and all the major players for both main titles seem to have found themselves in a Wargames match this time round.
Let me ask the chat. So in the next couple of days, I want to go back and watch some of the best Survivor Series shows. What are the best full cards.
Okay.
So give me some of those responses, Tom.
So Nick is asking, what are the best full cards for Survivor Series worth the watching? I'll catch up with a few more questions because you do have a few more, and then we'll read out some of the responses. I would suggest, from my end, 1998, the Deadly Game Tournament.
I didn't love that one so much, Tom.
It was very Attitude Era, but it stands out for me because I was very young at the time.
Yeah, I get it. It's very exciting, a lot of personalities. The ending was very intriguing, but that one didn't do it for me. I went back the other day and watched two matches. You know, I love Flair versus Rousey. I still think that's the best women's match ever,
Yes.
Including the post-match stuff. Just fantastic. And I watched Sid versus Michaels. Love that one. 96. Fantastic.
Brad says, I completely agree. WWE doesn't need CM Punk. Eric says, the short Tom released today got me laughing, for those not already aware. Shorts...
Were you nude?
No, I was not. Why do you always got to go there? Why is it all feet and nudes for you?
Short.
For those who aren't aware, shorts cycle, so at the end it starts again. So what I said was, CM Punk will not be appearing at Survivor Series, repeat after me, and then it just keeps going ad nauseum. It's quite funny, I thought so. Wiggly says there's more likelihood of me winning the World Cup than CM Punk returning to WWE. You see what I mean? There's always talk about CM Punk. Daniela says Carmelo Hayes losing last night to Josh Briggs was a shock. That's all NXT stuff. Unfortunately, I don't watch regularly enough to be able to respond. Nick, are you an NXT viewer regularly?
I'm not a regular viewer. I'm a premium live event viewer.
But apparently they're good enough to make you want to go to the show, so that's a pretty good sign.
Yeah, I just listen. Everybody has choices of how much they're willing to commit on a weekly basis to wrestling. Me watching the two main shows and then sitting with you for an hour, that's enough for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good hour, I thought, but apparently no. Sai says, do you see WWE taking any measures to manage the inevitable Punk chance in Chicago? I feel like Orton's spot might have been a mystery fifth member if they weren't concerned about a scramble for Punk. What I will say before handing it over to you, Nick, they did not keep a mystery Cody Rhodes entering the Royal Rumble the year he won, or Edge entering the Royal Rumble the year he won. So I don't feel they really do the mysteries anymore on PLEs, but instead only have them on TV. Nick, your thoughts?
I don't think they're going to have some rebellious chance for CM Punk. And if they are really concerned about it, the way to mitigate it is have the men's War Games match go first.
I would say so. I still think the women's will go first, but you're right. If they want to cut off any possibility of the chance, get the men's out of the way.
Yep.
Roger says, will we see the Usos team up again anytime soon? I would say no, they haven't even had the match yet. POG says, as regards live experiences, POG disagrees with our opinion on it, would like to say it's more about the experience and chant and other fun stuff which isn't possible from watching from home. I do get what you're saying there. I did very much enjoy booing CM Punk at Wembley and then chanting for Samoa Joe, so I do get what you're saying. There is an extra atmosphere to it, though I do feel that's stronger in the UK than in the US.
Let me tell you what I do not enjoy. I agree there's a lot to love, but the things that I do not love are getting my car out of that parking lot on the way in, waiting for, to spend exorbitant amounts of money on food. It's a commitment. It's a marriage for a night. It's big.
Dom says, I think Trish versus Becky in the steel cage would have my vote for women's match of the year. Personally, I do still go Rhea versus Charlotte, but the cage match was much better than we were expecting.
I go for the cage match personally, I think. If I were to want to rewatch one, I'd probably be that.
Do you think War Games has a chance to replace that?
No.
So I
don't think they're in there. I wouldn't even compare them just because, they're just so different. So different. It's like comparing the men's Royal Rumble to, a men's singles match. They're just too different.
It's very fair. It might potentially be a match of the year contender, but it would be completely different elements involved that make it so. Sai says, I was also at Mania 29, and that's what put me off. Great set, but the pillars blocked the view for so many.
Yeah, there you go.
Eric is also talking Bayley and War Games, says, I disagree. I think War Games is a perfect place to get rid of Bayley and Damage Control. You have the cage. It'll be perfect to write Bayley off. I see Damage Control winning it, though. Personally, I also have Damage Control winning, though I do feel Bayley will be somewhat eliminated before we get to it, so that Damage Control can celebrate without her. Chris says, I remember walking into SummerSlam 04 at the Air Canada Centre and being amazed Granted, it was the first pay-per-view I attended live. That definitely
What a
helped.
bad show. That was a bad show.
Tell me about the main event for SummerSlam 04. Can you remember what it was?
Yeah, it was Randy Orton versus Chris Benoit.
I wasn't really watching at the time, so it's not something on my lexicon. Chris also went to Unforgiven in 06 in the same arena.
Wait a minute, is that episode 4? It wasn't 04. I don't know. Now I'm starting to question myself.
And so you should. Chris has suggested Survivor Series 2002, saying he liked everything about that card. And now, remind me about...
Oh, yes, that was good. Survivor Series 2002, that was at Madison Square Garden. That was the first Elimination Chamber one.
Okay.
That had Jamie Noble versus Kidman. Was Kidman on the card? It was Jamie Noble. Yes. That was Trish versus Victoria in the street fight. That was a good card. There was the tables match, the open. Good card. Really good one.
I had just stopped watching at that point. Just.
Yeah, that's a great Survivor Series.
Richard says, could you see AJ Styles and LA Knight versus Solo and Jimmy being added? Personally, no. It was 5 matches last year. Wargames take up a lot of time. I think we'll stick with 5 matches. Fair enough. Jason says, Deadly Games was my last Survivor Series I watched. 2023 is my first since I've been out of the game for a while. We're getting a few opinions in. Sai says, personal favourite was when NXT held their own in the Survivor Series in 2019. All matches are across all 3 brands, and it was a great show. I do agree with that. I did very much enjoy 2019. Zane has suggested Survivor Series 1991. Can you tell us any more about that, Zane?
Yeah, well, actually, that's the one I did put that on. That was when Hulk Hogan lost the championship to The Undertaker. It was also Ric Flair's first one, and he was the sole survivor of the first match, which also included like Ted DiBiase was in that match, Bret Hart was in there, Warlord was in there. That was kind of like it was really a changing of the guard type show. I was looking though, and Twitter seems to trash that show, but that was a very, very important show. All things considered. I like that one.
I think shows that really stand the test of time also do tend to be sort of forgotten by social media in that regard. Because while it might not be the show that, gave you all the fan service you were looking for, it sets up for big things in the future. We've talked at length about Fully Loaded 99?
2000.
God damn it. Every time. How that was a show that really set the stage for WWE over the next 5-10 years. But it's not one a lot of people put down as one of their favorites.
Yeah. Well, and no more GDing. God is not listening to this. He is far too important for this show.
Fine. You tell me off for my blasphemy. Keyshawn is asking about Orton turning on Cody. Keyshawn, that was one of our first discussion topics. By all means, just sit back and catch up on that one. Sean says, I hope they tell a great story with Bayley. She still has potential as a babyface. Gunter Miz could be a very fun match. Gunter is so great right now. Again, you guys are the best. Nick, enjoy some time off, man, with no stress, just food.
Well, always stress. I'll tell you why. Sean, I don't know if you heard about my flat tire business. But actually, Sean, you raised a really good point. Bayley's a priority here. And that's why she shouldn't be kicked out of Judgment, out of Damage Control so fast. It needs to tell a story that allows her to eventually be a babyface without just being the heel who just the other heels didn't like. That doesn't make her a babyface. Tell a longer story that allows you as a fan to really get behind her for the future. Totally agree. There's a lot of stress going on. That's life. And this year Thanksgiving is happening, and when is that? Tomorrow, Tom? I know you don't celebrate, but tomorrow. There's a lot to be thankful for. As you all know, my dad is very, very ill, so we are going to be all coming together as a family to be with him. And other than that, it's like, unfortunately, the stress doesn't go away. It's just you got to find the things to be grateful for, and that's what we're choosing to do this year. It's not going to be a foot up, hair down kind of year. Not for this girl.
Do you have any message about Thanksgiving for the people watching and the people listening on PWTorch?
Yeah, you tip as a way of being thankful. So find me on Venmo.
Okay, right. There's a very different feel to the show today.
I'm sorry, Tom. If I'm supposed to go to the Dunkin' Donuts and have to answer a screen whether I'm going to tip somebody who didn't even put enough skim milk in my coffee, the fact that I'm going to haul my ass out here at noon the day before Thanksgiving and give opinions, that's tippable.
I mean, you didn't have to. You choose to be part of Nick
Because I
and
love
Tom's.
it. What is my message about Thanksgiving? Well, it's what I say. I think here's what I would say. It's I hope people enter into wrestling with a little bit, always with a critical eye, right? It's fun to be critical, but it's also fun to choose to be a little bit more positive. There's a lot to be thankful for as wrestling fans right now. It's a good community to be a part of. We see that every time we go live. You do it much more than me. But and there's a lot of great shows to really acknowledge. These shows are a million times better than they were a few years ago. So be thankful, be less critical of individual wrestlers. That doesn't get anybody anywhere.
Very true. Wiggly suggests Survivor Series in 2014 with the debut of Sting.
Nah.
Nick Bray is here, says hi Nick and Tom, so pleased I was able to catch you both. Thoughts with you and family. Nick says I lost my dad in the summer.
Thank you.
Bismo says good afternoon Tom and Nick. Plenty of people jumping in at this point, which I always find quite interesting. This is not a normal show time for us, and I very much appreciate the amount of you who've essentially made the pilgrimage today to make yourself available for the show. Thank you very kindly for it.
Sean, I love a pilgrim pun on Thanksgiving, Tom.
Sean says praying for your dad, and I'm always there for you guys. Appreciate that, Sean.
Thank you, guys.
Keyshawn says, do you see LA Knight getting a rematch in the near future? Yes, I do, though I don't think it's necessarily pay-per-view worthy at this point in time. And Sai says, thanks both for all you do. Told you both this privately, but you're the main reason I keep my Torch sub going. Always great insight, and thanks.
At D. Wade Keller.
Okay. Show off. I am going to say at this point we will wrap up our mailbag there. Nick, where can people find you if they want to talk further wrestling?
Money Talks, as you know, on Venmo at Nick-Barbati. Right? Isn't that how we do it?
How would I know? I've not been on Venmo.
Got $300 to pay back from the flat tire at Nick Barbati. Don't go tipping that other number at Nick Barbati. And then obviously on Twitter at Nicholas Barbati. I'd be happy to talk. Everyone's Survivor Series watching for this weekend. I love going back and rewatching the seasonal shows. This is a seasonal show. It's really good.
You can, of course, check out more of Nick and Tom's Intercontinental Adventure if you'd like this content on PWTorch's Daily Cast. It is a Saturday show, and please do check that out. We will be doing more of these preview shows. We're trying to do as many of them as we can for previews for pay-per-views, but of course the number is slightly diminished, and our next one would be around Royal Rumble time, but I'm sure we can find an excuse to have more Nick and Tom's on this channel or elsewhere if we're able to expand the brand at any point.
I got to go upstairs, Tom. I got to put up the Christmas tree. I'm almost done. I got the dog in the bedroom. She's losing it. I got the car. I got to wrap gifts. You tell me how you expect me to do all this.
He's a busy boy. Well, I thank you very much for coming out regardless, Nick, on your busy schedule, including running from a fire briefly. I mean, you were all action today.
Almost died. I got steps in during this call.
You did.
That's more than I can say about anybody else on this YouTube thing.
I will wrap it up there and say a big thank you for watching. I've been Tom.
Tom, you should always wrap it up. Always.
I've been Tom Colohue. He's been Nick Barbati. Thank you and goodbye.
We do not need any more of them.